Tonight, sweeping changes in the security sector. The president retires all service chiefs as well as the Inspector General of Police, appoints former EFCC boss Nuhu Ribadu as National Security Advisor, and new service chiefs, among others. I will prioritize the health and safety of Nigerians, President Bola Tinubu promises as he plays host to the co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, and president of Aliko Dangote Foundation, Aliko Dangote, at the State House. Federal government and representatives of the organized labor agreed to conclude negotiations on the removal of fuel subsidy in 8 weeks.
On business news tonight, delegates at the ongoing Afrexim Bank meeting in Ghana seek regional integration between Africa and the Caribbean in efforts to boost economic prosperity of both regions.
On sports news tonight, Super Eagles standing captain Kenneth Omerua commends the team for not giving up in their fight to qualify for the Africa Cup of Nations as the three-time champions return home.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control raises an alarm over dangerous herbal products on sale in the country.
And in international news from London, the US and China have pledged to stabilize their tense relationship following US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's two-day visit to Beijing.
Call it a tsunami of some sort, and you may not be wrong. The wave of change blowing across agencies of government is building momentum, with the latest shake-up in the immediate retirement of all service chiefs, Inspector General of Police, advisors, Controller General of Customs by President Bola Tinubu. In a statement by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the President has approved the appointment of Mr. Nuhu Ribadu as National Security Advisor, Major General Christopher Musa as Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Taoreed Lagbaja as Chief of Army Staff, Rear Admiral Emmanuel Ogala as Chief of Naval Staff, and Air Vice Marshal Hassan Abubakar as Chief of Air Staff. Others are DIG Kayode Egbetokun as Acting Inspector General of Police, Major General Epa Undiandeye as Chief of Defense Intelligence, Mr. Adeni Adewale as Acting Controller General of Customs, among others. The new National Security Advisor, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, a familiar name, is a former Assistant Commissioner of Police and the pioneer chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in 2003, who later joined the presidential race in 2011 under the ACN. The 55-year-old Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, holds a master's in military science and until his appointment was commander of the Joint Task Force of Operation Hadinkai. The new Chief of Army Staff, Major General Taoreed Lagbaja, also holds a master's in strategic studies and was the GOC-1 division of the Nigerian Army until his latest appointment. Air Vice Marshal Hassan Abubakar holds a master's in international affairs and diplomacy, who belongs to various chartered institutes and was the Chief of Standards and Operations at the NAF headquarters until his appointment as the 22nd Chief of Air Staff. His colleague, Rear Admiral Emmanuel Ogala, the Chief of Naval Staff, was a member of the NDA 39 regular course who served at the Naval Headquarters in Policy and Planning, while DIG Kayode Egbetokun holds a PhD in Peace and Security Studies and was DIG Force Criminal Investigation until his appointment as Acting Inspector General of Police. The statement explains that all appointments as service chiefs, the IGP and Controller General of Customs are in acting capacity pending their confirmation in accordance with the Constitution. Meanwhile, the president is promising to prioritize health and safety of Nigerians, saying that the health of citizens is critical for the development of any country. President Bola Tinubu stated this when he received in audience the co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mr. Bill Gates, and president of Aliko Dangote Foundation, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, today at the State House. He said his administration will do all that is required to make their work in Nigeria and Africa successful. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Umezoke, reports.
Co-founder of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mr. Bill Gates makes his second appearance in the State House since 2018, alongside Africa's businessman, Mr. Aliko Dangote. President Bola Tinubu meets both men in his office.
Great to see you. Thanks for being with me.
President Tinubu pledges to give priority to issues of health in the country, explaining the importance of focusing on the sector if the country must record any development. According to a statement released by the Special Advisor to the President on Special Duties, Communications and Strategy, Mr. Dele Alaki, the President would do all that is required to support them in the areas of eradicating polio, measles, malaria and other diseases on the continent.
It was a courtesy call. We came in for myself and my friend Bill Gates to congratulate him once more for his successful election into this office, and also to brief him of what Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Aliko Dangote Foundation we've been doing in Nigeria, and also committing to do more and to help Nigeria so that our health sector will keep improving, which will turn out to be better for the whole citizens of the country. We even congratulated him on the removal of subsidy. There will be more money now to put into education, into health, infrastructure and other areas. And our own side is to help support him to make sure that he achieves his own vision and his goals.
The President has apparently not shifted grounds on his commitment towards advancing the health and safety of Nigerians as he seeks to revive public confidence in the nation's health sector. Today as well, the President also received the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, Bureau of Energy Resources. For the first time since assuming office, President Tinubu meets with the U.S. Ambassador Jeffrey Pratt in his office. He asked for a stronger and better cooperation with the United States as Nigeria and the rest of the world move in the quest for renewable and other sources of clean energy. According to the President, Nigeria is an oil-producing nation and a developing economy that needs revenue from fossil fuel for growth and development. The new energy we are talking about represents just 5% of global energy requirements. We must find the right balance between new energy and fossil fuel because we have a problem of poverty in Africa, unquote. The President wrapped up the day with the visit of the chairman of the Progressives Governors Forum, Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State. From the Presidential Villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Staying with the presidency, the President will on Thursday, June the 22nd, attend a new Global Financial Pact summit in Paris, France, his first official trip outside the country since assuming power as President. According to President Bola Tinubu's Special Advisor on Special Duties, Communication and Strategy, Dele Alaki, the summit is to review and sign the new global pact that places vulnerable countries on priority list for support and investment. This follows the devastating impact of climate change, energy crisis, and the after effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The two-day meeting, being hosted by President Emmanuel Macron and to be attended also by other world leaders, will look at opportunities to restore fiscal space to countries that face difficult short-term financial challenges and mobilize innovative financing for countries vulnerable to climate change. It will equally encourage investment in green infrastructure for the energy transition in emerging and developing economies. President Bola Tinubu will be accompanied on the trip by members of the Presidential Policy Advisory Council and senior government officials and is due back in Abuja on Saturday. To the fuel subsidy matters, where federal government representatives and the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) and Trade Union Congress (TUC) today resumed talks on steps to mitigate the effects of the decision by the Bola Tinubu administration. A briefing State House correspondents after the meeting, both parties said they agreed to set up a steering committee that will receive reports from other subcommittees within 8 weeks.
As we promised the last time, when we adjourned, when Labour called off the strike and tabled their demands, we went through all those demands, and ourselves, that is government and Labour, went through all the items on their list, and we all said we were going to go back to our principals and make consultations. They also said they were going to go to the executives and members and make consultations so that we should reconvene today and move forward. And that's exactly what we did. We reconvened today, and then both parties went through this list and we ticked off the viable ones. Those things are broken into 3 different categories. The immediate, those that can be of low-hanging fruit in the immediate C, then in the short run, the medium term, and the long term. So those list of demands in terms of implementation and execution fall into those 3 broad categories of short, medium, and long-term, categories.
The president of the Trade Union Congress also spoke on behalf of the organized labor, giving details on the talks.
The communique that was signed the last time we had a meeting. So if you look at that communique, there are some action items in that communique. So it's actually how will these action items be delivered. So, for example, we need to have a presidential steering committee that will oversee everything. Then we also need to have technical subcommittees because, for example, when you talk about the issue of CNG, so the issue of CNG, you need experts. The issue of CNG, you need those people that are willing to invest in the issue of CNG. You need the National Oil Company, NNPC Limited, to come up with what they need to do and the time with which they are going to deliver. So all that, there are some technicalities that are required beyond this meeting. So those technicalities will now move into the technical committee. So those technical committee will subsume into the presidential committee. But all these, we must conclude everything maximum in 8 weeks. So those technical committee, some will submit their report in 1 week. Once they submit in 1 week, we implement. Some will submit in 2 weeks, we implement. But the last should not exceed 8 weeks. We could not agree broadly, totally on the final terms of reference, but we will work on that between today, tomorrow, and have the full terms of reference across all boards, because we are looking at having a broad 5 technical committees that will subsume into the presidential steering committee. Yeah.
To the Judiciary, the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, are again accusing the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, of frustrating the hearing of its petition before the Presidential Election Court. At the resumed hearing of the petition, counsel to the petitioners claimed that INEC has refused to release some documents needed for the prosecution of their case. Counsel to INEC, however, countered the claim, saying the allegation against the commission was untrue.
It's another hearing session as the Presidential Election Petition Court resumes sitting in Abuja. The day's proceedings begin with the hearing of the petition filed by the Allied People's Movement, challenging the election victory of President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima of the All Progressives Congress. At the resumed hearing, the party asked for a 1-week adjournment to enable it to get the certified true copy of the Supreme Court judgment, which dismissed the suit filed by the People's Democratic Party, seeking to nullify President Tinubu's election based on allegations of double nomination against his running mate, now Vice President Kashim Shettima. The request was turned down by the court, as the court adjourned the hearing of the petition to the 21st of June for further hearing. After the adjournment of the petition by the Allied People's Movement, court proceeds to hear the petition filed by People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, Mr. Atiku Abubakar. In an attempt to prove its case, the party calls 3 more witnesses to support their petition. On the part of the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, the party, through its counsel, Mr. Jibrin Okutekpa, blames the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for frustrating the hearing of their petition. This claim is immediately debunked by the counsel to INEC, Mr. Abubakar Mahmood, who countered that the allegation is untrue. As tempers rose, the panel of justices sued for calm as they stressed the need for cooperation in order to unearth the truth about the February 25th presidential election. The presiding judge, Justice Haruna Samani, after listening to both parties, adjourned further hearing on the matter to the 20th of June 2023.
In part 2 after the break, Barely a day after resigning their positions and dumping the PDP, the former members of the Imo State Working Committee of the party joined the All Progressives Congress, APC. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Sweeping changes in the security sector. The president retires all service chiefs as well as the Inspector General of Police, appoints former EFCC boss Nuhu Ribadu as National Security Advisor and new service chiefs, among others. I will prioritize the health and safety of Nigerians, President Bola Tinubu promises as he plays host to the co-founder of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, and president of Aliko Dangote Foundation, Aliko Dangote, at the State House. Federal government and representatives of the organized labor agreed to conclude negotiations on the removal of fuel the state capital, has dismissed an attempt by the People's Democratic Party and its candidate in the March 18 governorship election, Ladi Adebutu, to introduce new facts to the reply by the second respondent, Dakwa Abiodun, to the PDP petition. In a unanimous ruling, the tribunal, headed by Justice Hamidu Kunas, held that the petitioner failed to utilize the 21-day window of opportunity to bring new facts to its petition. According to the tribunal, the PDP had attempted to introduce new facts which border on vote buying. The tribunal thereafter adjourned till the 22nd of this month for commencement of pre-hearing of the petition. In a bid to further strengthen the nation's judiciary, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, has sworn in 6 newly appointed judges of the National Industrial Court at the Supreme Court in Abuja. Justice Ariwola challenged the judges to discharge their duties with utmost honor and integrity of their calling by shunning all forms of corruption. He says the nation's judiciary is in need of men and women of unquestionable character who will dispense justice to the citizens without the fear of external intimidation and manipulation.
Many high-profile cases will definitely come to you, and they may likely come in company of some juicy, irresistible temptations, especially when they involve mouth-watering financial and business transactions. I'm making it clear to you now that you must flee from such disguised danger. Your reputation and integrity matter much, and it counts enormously in your rise to honor and fame in life. Let me point out unambiguously that in life, gifts and wealth that are not worked for, which are by extension undeserving, are always wrapped in calamity and destruction. Flee from them and keep your heads high above the murky waters of corruption and favoritism. No judicial officer at any level of our courts will be allowed to drag the reputation of the Nigerian judiciary into the mud. We can't come this far to fail. Take heed of this admonition by working rightly towards occupying an enviable space in the annals of the Nigerian judiciary.
Former President of the Court of Appeals, Justice Zainab Bulkachua, has broken her silence over her husband, Senator Adamu Bulkachua's famous admission that he solicited favors from her on behalf of his colleagues while she was in office. In a statement released today, Mrs. Bulkachua denied any wrongdoing or ever compromising her oath of office at any time, contrary to her husband's comments suggesting that she acted unethically on several occasions. She said her decisions have always been based on facts. the law and in accordance with her conscience and oath of office, and that justices under her leadership can attest to the fact that she never interfered with their independence. While addressing the valedictory session of the 9th Assembly, her husband, Senator Bulkachua, representing Bauchi North, boasted about infringing on his wife's freedom and independence while she served as president of the Appellate Court. He bragged that he aided his colleagues in the Senate to obtain favors from his wife while she was superintending over the Court of Appeal. Barely 24 hours after resigning and dumping the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, the former members of the Imo State Working Committee of the party have now joined the All Progressives Congress, APC. The former PDP officials paid a courtesy visit on the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodimma, at the Government House in Owerri, where they pledged their support to the Uzodimma administration. Governor Uzodimma commended them for taking what he describes as a positive and bold step, urging them to continue to support his administration.
And I assure you, nothing will discriminate against this decision. We are going to work together, and you even have better space for relevance. And I can assure you, in the next couple of weeks, you will confirm to any doubting Thomas that you took the right decision. The political party is a vehicle. The purpose of boarding any vehicle is to get to a destination. So when you get to your destination, what is important is to do what you're supposed to do. That will give you not only satisfaction, but will also enable you to achieve your critical and cardinal objective, which is service to our people. We cannot have our members of our first team in Imo State stay at the bench when there is a match to play. So that today we are receiving, I can tell you because we know the political history of this team. This team before me are members of our first 11.
Away from politics, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mr. Mele Kyari, is seeking the support of the American government in its quest to meet the 2060 net zero carbon emissions target for a safer environment. Speaking when the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Energy, Mr. Jeffrey Pyatt, paid a visit to his office, Mr. Kyari called for support in the areas of technology, knowledge transfer on green energy initiatives, and other sources of clean energy. All right, let's head to the nation's capital, and Victor Mathias is standing by to give us the very latest at our Abuja studios. Hello, Victor. What do you have for us?
Hello, Ayotunde. It's a pleasure to have you right here. But let's begin with stories from the nation's capital, where the National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has raised an alarm over the proliferation of dangerous, unapproved herbal products in the country. Director General of the agency, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, told journalists at a news conference in Abuja that most of the herbal medicines are in the form of snuff and oral liquid, which are mainly sold by street hawkers. She says an enforcement team of the agency is clamping down on the manufacturers and traders who sell such uncertified products nationwide.
We have commenced a nationwide mop-up of sacred herbs in circulation. We have also intensified crackdown on all illegal manufacturers and distributors of herbal preparation and other unregistered preparations with a view to bring perpetrators to book and minimize the usage of these substances. It will also not be out of place to put on record some other related enforcement actions carried out recently, late last year, in fact, as it relates to illegal manufacture, importation, advertisement, and sale of unregistered herbal drugs. I want to assure Nigerians that NAFDAC is doing everything to ensure that only safe medicines and wholesome food of the right quality are sold to our citizenry. We are also making efforts to increase the number of staff that we have, because we need more staff to go on the street for surveillance and post-marketing monitoring.
Still ahead on the news at 10, delegates at the ongoing Afrexim Bank meeting in Accra, Ghana seek regional integration between Africa and the Caribbean. That's on Business News. Do join us again. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, former President Goodluck Jonathan, former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, religious leaders and other many prominent Nigerians have been paying tributes to media entrepreneur Chief Raymond Dokpesi. They admonished Nigerians to emulate his good deeds. They were speaking at an event organized in honor of the late chairman of Dar Communications Limited, who died on May the 29th, 2023. Also present at the event were former Senate President Senator Bukola Saraki and the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi. And now to some company news. Pan-African Multinational Company Corporation for Africa and Overseas, CFAO, is celebrating 120 years of business operation in Nigeria. Now, to celebrate this milestone, the management of the company hosted its staff and partners to a gala night in Lagos. The company notes that its successes over the years is reflective of the support of the government as well as the resilient and entrepreneurial spirit of Nigerians.
It calls for celebration as Corporation for Africa and Overseas, popularly known as CFAO, reaches an enviable milestone, 120 years of operation in Nigeria. Guests in attendance at this gala night cuts across Nigeria and other African countries where CFAO operates, as well as Paris, where it is headquartered. So much to reflect on: moments of challenges, progress and transformation, and most importantly, successes.
We have evolved as a company, deeply rooted in our community, striving to contribute to the development of our beloved Nigeria.
We are reaching €1 billion sales for Nigeria in the coming years, and at least to have 10% of the people working for the group to be in Nigeria.
In his remark, the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, commends the company for building a strong relationship with the federal and the Lagos State government.
It is therefore my belief that CFAO will continue to nurture the trust of Nigerians and the Nigerian market by not relenting in adding value to the Nigerian economy through high-valued products and commitments to the corporate social responsibility which we know them for.
The event will not go without awarding employees who have demonstrated unwavering commitment to the company. The high point of the evening is a posthumous award granted to the former chairman of CFAO Nigeria, Chief Molade Okoye Thomas. The award is received by his family.
On behalf of everything, all of them, congratulations.
For CFAO, 120 years births a new beginning in its quest to continue to foster economic and social development through its operations in Nigeria.
Quite historic. But that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to Ayatunde in Lagos with the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Victor Matthias. The International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, the IITA, in conjunction with MasterCard Foundation, has held the second edition of the Agri-Business Investors Network, a forum which aims at youth empowerment to boost the agriculture value chain in Nigeria. Delivering a keynote address on agribusiness in Nigeria, a former president and IITA ambassador said funding low interest rate loan as incentives to grow the sector make it attractive to the youth. Lending his voice also, the Deputy Director General, Partnership for Delivery, the IITA, Mr. Ken Dashel, says government and other development partners must begin to put the right policies and programs in place to attract the youth into agriculture.
There are so many myths of what agriculture is than what agriculture is not. Agriculture is a business like any other business. That is the thematic reference for this forum, organized by the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA, in partnership with MasterCard Foundation, some banks, and other business entities. Agribusiness and the youth is the mainstay here, so we have the investors, the government, the banks, the enabling environment being set up here, then the young people connecting to people they wouldn't have had access to or easy access to, and letting the big investors understand the opportunities in agriculture as an area of partnership.
We would like to restate that we look forward to an impactful and rewarding session here with all of you.
Former head of state and a farmer has graced this occasion, speaking to the injustice done to farmers, the aging workforce, imminent food production crisis, the casual attention, among other concerns.
What do we need? It's a serious business that requires commitment. It requires funding, a reasonable cost for the funds that we put into agriculture. It requires right inputs, right and appropriate input, beginning from seed.
There are testimonies of young successful farmers like this fella who is into soilless farming.
Today we are building 120 acres of hydroponics farm in Ogun State. Quarterly we are training 1,000 students. We are training them and paying them stipends per month.
Business people like to do the numbers, so to help de-risk investment in agriculture is to show the opportunities.
Here, we're still worried about whether or not we should invest in agriculture. So it is a wake-up call that we need to look at opportunities in agriculture.
ITA says it is proud of the evening for all it represents and targets set.
Our first line of support is the technologies that make agriculture highly productive and highly profitable.
Beyond research and offering the results for sustainable productivity, ITA says agribusiness is real with a guaranteed market. Investment only needs to meet capacity.
Time now for some business news with Jaka Rogers.
Thank you, Ayo. This is more business news, I believe. While the introduction of the Pan-African Payment Settlement System has saved over $5 billion for the continent and enhanced the rate of currency conversion between member countries. This formed part of the opening remarks of the president of the Afrexim Bank, Ben Orama, at the 30th edition of the bank's annual meeting. According to Mr. Orama, the bank has demonstrated a strong financial base over the last 30 years and worked hard towards strengthening intra-African trade. Guests at the event, including the host president, Nana Akufo-Addo, and the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, also highlighted the importance of trade relations between both regions. Chairman of Bharti Airtel Worldwide, Sunil Bharti Mittal, has hailed the federal government's decision to eliminate multiple foreign exchange rates and introduce a unified process in the country. He gave the commendation today when he met with President Bola Tinubu in Abuja, the nation's capital. According to him, the decision to float the naira, which has been a long-standing issue and a challenge for foreign investors, will unleash new investments in the country. He noted that lack of easy access to foreign exchange had prevented the company from importing critical equipment needed for its operations in Nigeria. The domestic stock market began the third trading week of June slightly positive as gains in Dangote Cement and GTCO offset the losses from telco giant MTN Nigeria. John Mekwa tells us more. Well, thank you so much, Joke. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, I can tell you that the bull is back. Well, it looks like investors are taking a breather from taking profit as the all-share index advanced at the close of Monday's trade by 0.02%, retaining the 59,000 points there, and more interesting, retaining the 32 trillion naira for the market cap. It's a comfortable place to be, at least for now. Let's look at the sectors now. Banking, my favorite sector, they did so well today, almost 3% in the green. And because of the fugas, the GT Core, the Zenith Bank, the Access, the UBA, they brought us here. And then Dangote Cement did this to industrial goods, 0.65%. Dangote again. Now, Dangote Sugar did this. Well, combination of Dangote and Nigerian breweries did this to the consumers goods, 0.15%. Another interesting thing about the market today is the value. It just keeps going up. For today, it went up more than 70% compared to previous trade at 11.1 billion naira. So even when there's profit taken in the market, we see value going up, and it tells us that investors, or more investors, seem to be getting interested in the NGX. We hope to sustain that interest. Well, that's the Stock Market Report. I'm John Mekwa. Back to you, Joke. That's business news. All the news at 10. Aya, back to you.
Thank you so much, Joke. Coming up on the news at 10, the U.S. and China pledge to stabilize their tense relationship following U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's two-day visit to Beijing. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The U.S. and China have pledged to stabilize their tense relationship following U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's two-day visit to Beijing. Mr. Blinken met China's President Xi Jinping for talks on Monday, restarting high-level communications between the rival superpowers. Mr. Xi says they had made progress, while Mr. Blinken indicated that both sides were open to further talks. Here's Simon Puzi on more on international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US and China have pledged to stabilize their tense relationship following US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's two-day visit to Beijing.
Good afternoon. 主席好。
Mr. Blinken met China's President Xi Jinping for talks on restarting high-level communications between the rival superpowers. Mr. Xi said they had made progress, while Mr. Blinken indicated that both sides were open to further talks. But the top US diplomat made clear that there remained major differences. The face-to-face meeting comes at a time when both Beijing and Washington have acknowledged a low in diplomatic ties.
Those objectives that we set for this trip, establishing open communications channels, directly raising issues of concern, exploring cooperation in places where it's in our mutual interest to do so. We did all of that on this trip, but progress is hard.
South Africa's president has described the African delegation's peace mission to Ukraine and Russia as impactful, despite Russian President Vladimir Putin pouring cold water on the plan, already largely dismissed by Kyiv. Cyril Ramaphosa, who presented Putin with the 10-point peace initiative on Saturday, said the two most important outcomes of the discussions were that the African leaders were listened to as they gave an African perspective on the war and its negative impact on Africa. The African leaders were seeking agreement on a series of confidence-building measures, even as Kyiv last week began a counteroffensive.
The impact that it has had is that, one, we were listened to, as we gave an African perspective on the war that's having negative consequences for our continent.
Israeli commandos, backed by helicopter gunships, have killed 5 Palestinians, including a teenager, and wounded as many as 66 people after a raid in the West Bank led to an hour-long gun battle. The military said 7 Israeli personnel were wounded after troops came under fire during an operation in the flashpoint town of Jenin to arrest 2 Palestinians suspected in attacks. At least 2 of the Palestinians killed in the fighting belonged to the armed Islamic Jihad group. Here an explosion enveloping an armoured vehicle as shots rang out in Jenin. An official from the Fatah party said fighters from the nearby cities of Nablus and Tulkarem had arrived in Jenin to support local fighters. Australia's Senate has passed legislation that will pave the way for the country to hold a landmark referendum later this year on whether to recognise its Indigenous people in the Constitution.
The ayes 52 and the noes 19. I call the clerk.
Lawmakers supporting the bill clapped and cheered as the final numbers of the vote were read out in the House. 52 voted in favour of the bill, while 19 voted against. The referendum, the first for Australia since 1999, will ask citizens whether they support altering the Constitution to include a committee that can advise Parliament on matters affecting its Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people.
Parliaments pass laws, but it is people who make history. This is your time, your chance, your opportunity to be a part of making history.
At least 12 people have been killed in Brazil's southern state of Rio Grande do Sul after an extratropical cyclone struck the region on Friday. The storm caused torrential rains and helicopter searches are underway in flooded neighbourhoods to find 5 others who have gone missing. Besides sending help via helicopters in some flooded towns, firefighters have resorted to using boats to be able to help affected residents. And the American actor Tom Cruise has met excited fans outside a hotel in Rome the day before the 7th instalment of the Mission Impossible film series holds its world premiere. Greeting and gesturing towards the crowd, Cruise walked around the outside of the Hassler Roma Hotel's entrance, along with several security personnel. The actor returns to his leading role in the upcoming film Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, alongside a star-studded cast. Cruise and cast members will attend the movie's London premiere on June the 22nd. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. The victorious Super Eagles of Nigeria back after securing a spot at next year's Africa Cup of Nations in what will be their 20th appearance. Defender Kenneth Omero was captain in the match, commended his teammates for not giving up on the club. And Spain's King Felipe earlier today welcomed the Spanish national football team a day after they won the Nations League trophy, beating Croatia 4-5 on penalties. It's their first international trophy in over a decade. And that's it on sports. Ayotunde is back to you.
Many thanks, Jeffrey. And the main news again. The President today retired all service chiefs as well as the Inspector General of Police and appointed former EFCC boss Nuhu Ribadu as the National Security Advisor and also new service chiefs.